All right, cool. Um, Welcome guys to our panel on raid leading. I'm Ariza. People usually call me Ori, and over this next hour, we're going to be talking about raid leading mistakes I've made over the past few years, or we've made, and hopefully how you guys can avoid repeating those mistakes in the future. Um, and joining me are my two very talented co-hosts and raid members, Stal and Q. If you could introduce yourselves, please. Q, you can go first.
Hello. Hi, I'm Qoya. People call me Q. I've been raid leading since the beta of Final Fantasy 14 all the way back in, well, the beta of A Realm Reborn back in 2013. I haven't been raid leading all the time, but it's been on and off.
Cool. And Stall?
Hi, I'm stal. Started playing Heaven Sword. Started reading in Delta Skate. I mainly lead Reprog Savage and Ultimate groups. I also had leadership responsibilities in my previous group, which was Move, where I mainly handle recruitment and scheduling.
Cool. Yeah, sorry about the audio. It should be better now. But yeah, and as for me, I started playing the game in patch 3.4, which was Creator. That was my first tier, and I've been raid leading since Sigmascape. So I've been raiding leading for about 3.5 months straight, the whole time. Okay, and before we get into it, I do want to say, um, that anyone can be a successful raid lead. It's not necessarily easy, but if you're resilient and you respect the people on your team, I think you'll learn the skills it takes to be able to lead a group well. And I think it's pretty common for people to lack confidence when it comes to raid leading because, most people don't have leading experience. That's not something you just easily get. But I also don't think anyone is just not cut out for raid leading. So at first it's hard, but like anything else, it will get easier over time, and we're here to help you out. So um, let's start with talking about two important things to know before you even start raid leading. And these are like really important things that I wish I knew before I started raid leading at all. Oh, let's do this. All right. The first most important thing you can do as a raid lead, the most important thing is align everyone in the group with the same goals and the same expectations. And I cannot stress this enough. Like, if you're going to come away from this panel and you only learn one thing from all of this, it should be that you will have to align your group on goals. They're everything. Um, a group that does not agree on goals or expectations is doomed. And this kind of makes sense if you think about it, right? If my goal is to clear a raid tier in 1 week, and Q's goal is to just have some fun with the friends, clear before next patch, we're going to be taking very different approaches to the game, and I don't think either of us would be happy to raid with each other. So, different goals should be in different groups. And besides prog speed, your other goals can be like speed killing optimization, to spend time with friends, or like your goal can basically be anything you want. But I will say you shouldn't make your goal to have fun because everyone raids for fun, and even us three crazy people who prog for 16 hours a day when new content comes out, we do it because it's fun. So if you want to raid for fun, you should think about, well, what defines that fun for me? Is it like spending time with my friends or anything else? More detailed, more measurable if possible. So I learned this lesson the hard way many times, not aligning the group on goals. And I think in the past experience, nearly all of my bad experiences or like groups that disbanded were caused by misaligned goals. So here's an example of what I told every member of my current group when I was building the team. So here we go. And this is for my current group. So this is me trying to rectify my past mistakes and trying to make sure everyone on the team has the same goals. So I'm not going to read the whole thing, but basically I say, like, I want to make sure you're okay with this. I want like a long-term group that will do this many days of rating. We're going to achieve this placement or this time to clear, and with this mentality. So it's like very important. I told every single person in my group. I sent them that exact message. You can see it's copy pasted. And I needed them to confirm like we're okay with this. Of course, like my raid group is a little more serious. Um, we're like aiming for clearing the raid tiers really fast. But I think trying to confirm with people what they expect to get out of the group is a good idea. Um, and I think Stall and Q have similar experiences when it comes to this whole goal thing.
Yeah, definitely. I've had many issues in the past with expectations and goals being different. I think one example that sticks out to me is after Deltascape when the first Ultimate came out, UCOP, my group we went to try and do it, but even though the group was very good, it eventually we had to stop and eventually disbanded because several members weren't actually interested in doing it. And I think what I've learned from that was that it's important to try and understand what motivates each member of your team to raid or to play, because some players they raid for the loot. They want to get BIS gear. Some players they raid for the challenge. They want to clear all the content, the hard content. And some players just raid to play with their friends. And I think all of these are fine, but you got to be careful because when you've got all these people with different motivations, it can cause conflicts. Like the in my early example, the team I had in Deltascape, there were some people who the reason that they raided was just to get like the BIS loot, and they weren't really interested in doing the challenge, clearing the content for the challenge. So when Ultimate came out, and Ultimate's rewards are like the weapon is just a very small upgrade, and apart from that, it's just like cosmetics and the title. But they weren't interested in that, and so they weren't interested in raiding Ultimate. And eventually, we couldn't. Like some players wanted to do it, some players didn't. And eventually the group couldn't continue like that, so we had to stop and eventually disbanded. So
Yeah,
yeah.
I think there was also an instance in one of our previous groups, along with Q as well. Q was in it, where a certain player wanted loot to be unfairly assigned to them so they could do log runs and speed kills. So basically, all the loot has to be funneled to them, otherwise, he would get angry even if he didn't say anything. So basically, just aggro. And we didn't want to cause conflict, so we just went along with it and gave it to him.
Yeah, I think all of us have had similar experiences um, with the goals. So if you remember one thing from this presentation, please, goals. It's so important. And like you probably have like a vague amorphous idea of what the goal is in your mind, but if you can get it down definitively and like communicate it to your raid members, it helps a lot. Um, okay, that's enough about goals. It's stressing a lot. Move on. Um, the other thing, right? There's two things that you should know before raid leading, and the other thing is that nothing will ever go according to plan. Or sorry, not everything will go according to plan. Some things will, but realistically, you will constantly face road bumps, and like things will just go awry. So my main advice for you is to focus on how you can resolve these situations and continue moving forward, because there's no real point in doing things like assigning blame to people or trying to avoid responsibility. And like in the moment, yeah, sure, it feels better, like, oh, it's not my fault, it's their fault. But at the end of the day, as the raid lead, you are going to have to be the person that fixes the issue that comes up. And if you did assign blame, not only you're going to still have to fix that issue, you probably also stirred up animosity within the group and made things worse. Of course, as a side note, if things are bad enough, then you should definitely speak your mind, and like it might come down to kicking people from your group or doing whatever you need to do. But in those cases, you should use your best judgment and try to keep a solution oriented mindset. Um, yeah. So let's just move on to the first step of raid leading. And honestly, the part that I get a lot of questions about, and this is how to build the group. And Stal, do you want to take over and talk about the next few things?
Sure. So, I guess this falls under recruitment. So, most important thing is basically what been talking about, right? Setting goals. So that shit's super important to make sure that your group has a goal in mind and when you recruit people that are on the same page as you and all that. So if the person you want to recruit is kind of like, yeah, okay, I'll join your group, but along the way they also compromise on their own goals, I think that's a huge red flag. And honestly, they probably wouldn't be here for long anyway. So some of the common pitfalls people have with recruitment, there's actually a few, but I think one of the bigger ones is a favorite tool, FF logs. Very TOS. Many people, they like to compare logs all the time, and they always say things like, "Oh, if you're not 95, you'll never get into a good group. If you're not 99, you'll always get stuck in a bad group." So first things first, tell them they're really stupid because logs are not everything. It's very useful for determining player skill, like how much DPS they can dish out, but rating is honestly so much more than that. And frankly, if you're aiming to create a decent group, DPS is usually the least of your troubles because if you get a good player with a good attitude, they will more than likely be willing to improve their DPS on their own anyway. There are also other factors like how much experience they have in raiding and consistency in mechanics. And even if you think that logs should be your main priority, the thing is they don't even tell the full story when it comes to DPS. Some people refuse to upload logs if they have bad DPS, and some even delete logs to make their average median look good. And when you actually get them in your party, you realize how inconsistent they are because they wipe 10 times in a row because they want to greet that one GCD. Totally did not experience that, by the way. In recruitment, it was pretty bad. So the takeaway is not that I'm not saying that logs are not important. They are to a certain degree after all. But you shouldn't place so much emphasis on it. Because a player who doesn't want to let their group down will always strive to do the best they can, regardless of how much DPS they're dealing. Next, I think this is one of the most important ones for me, which is personality. It usually starts with the really small things that people mostly take for granted, like showing up to raid on time, whether people prepare for raid, if they are respectful, and worst comes to worst, if a conflict breaks out, how will they react? Like, are they pagro? Do they stir shit up, or do they try to get things settled and whatever? And obviously, you can't magically read someone after knowing them for a few hours, right? I mean, after all, this dude's a stranger to you, and you're literally just trying to recruit. So usually, what I would do during recruitment is to have a chat with them. I will ask kind of just very generic things like past raid experiences and all that. Sometimes throw a couple questions in their way to try to make them talk. And this is all really just to have a gut feeling. And while it may not be exactly spot on, I feel like it's better than not knowing at all. If it just so happens that you end up not enjoying like their playing with them and everything, if you don't enjoy playing with them, and even though it also seemed like they might be a good member, maybe they're just a very good player, right? But you don't like playing with them and you can't really help it. It's just human nature. Then I feel like there's not much point because you're gonna suffer for the next few months. And I've tried it. It sucked. And it's important to achieve your goals, but if you're not having fun, what's the point?
Yeah,
Because ultimately, when you look back at your raid groups, you would usually think about the experience you had while raiding and not so much about when you cleared the fight. Like I wouldn't think about my group getting walled or whatever when I look back in it. I will think about like, oh, remember this one time when we cleared Aether's phone was ringing.
Oh my
Aether's
god.
phone was ringing so fast and that shit was really funny. I remember the time we did like the really stupid strat antennas and it was just worked out. Like I would think about all these things, but I wouldn't think about like, oh yeah, remember we got war second E10s. I wouldn't think of that. But I think specifically for this point, it's more challenging for hardcore and highly goal focused groups because you just have to find a balance between the two. And if you weren't listening to this whole thing, TLDR, don't undervalue personality.
yeah.
Sorry. Oh, you
Oh
go.
yeah, you
You
go
go.
ahead, Q.
Yeah, I wanted to add. One thing I found is a lot of groups like to do they like to do trials, and I found when I do trials, I'm not really looking at player skill because player skill is something, they might one trial isn't really enough to tell if a player is a good player or a bad player. They might be, they might be very nervous or they they might just be having a bad day. So when I do a trial, I'm actually looking out for these personality things. Do does the player get along well with the group? Are we having fun playing with them? And I think that's when you do a trial, that's what you should be looking out for because trying to judge a player's skill based on like a trial is very difficult.
Nodders.
Yeah. This personality thing that we're talking about is like, oh man, I think like Stahl said in the past, I also have had the mentality of like, oh, I don't care who I play with. I just want to play with people who are good. I just want to clear the content. Um, and this was more of a thing for me when UCOB came out, like almost 4 years ago now. And I did not enjoy the groups I was playing with, and I would play with them. Like we rated like 40 hours a week, and it was just honestly, I feel like when I look back, it was just like a month or 2 months of suffering, and then we cleared, which was nice. But it's not worth all that like pain to my mental health for like over a month. Um, and I actually, when we were talking about the recruitment thing, Stahl mentioned um, you can't really fully grasp someone's personality, but you can get, your gut feeling. And I want to just show an example of a message I had with someone. Actually, this was on the other end. So I was actually applying for a group. But actually, so when you think about a lot of the recruitment tips we give, they can actually be applied both ways. So, like, as a person who's looking for a group, you want to make sure that group is right for you, and the group wants to make sure you're right for the group. So it goes both ways. So this was me when I was applying for a group, and this is what the person who I was talking to said. Uh, Now, I think for some people this is like very obviously a red flag, and for me it is too. But I like, and this, I guess this isn't a great example of like the gut feeling thing. This is a little bit, just a little bit more obvious. But they say like we say what we want, we turn off our filters, we be our true selves, and it's just like they aren't coming and saying definitively that they say bad things, but for me it's like, yeah, that's a situation that I already know that I would be comfortable with. So pretty much the next day I was like, yeah, I'm not gonna try out with your group, sorry. So yeah, just be on the lookout when you talk to people, and honestly um trust your gut instinct. More often than not it's right, in my experience. uh yeah.
Spoiler, they did say bad things.
Yeah, unfortunately. But we can't share
Uh,
those things, so just move on.
We moving on?
Yeah.
Okay, so another thing that I still constantly struggle with as someone who is very emotional and always anxious is patience.
yeah,
So
that's why
that's why I
I'm
can't
getting
fish,
used.
dude.
Yeah.
The big fishing is tough. Anyway, there's always that temptation to kind of want to fill your group ASAP because recruitment fucking sucks. And I hate recruiting so much. It's such a pain in the ass. Nobody likes it. It's just annoying. And it's so easy to look at the first person and be like, oh yeah, I think he's great. Let's just pick him up, get this over and done with. His locks look good. He sounds okay. Whatever, right? But that's usually a bad idea. You should try to think about things in the long run because recruiting someone who is on the same page as you, goals and culture wise, saves you a lot of trouble. Honestly, just think about it. If you end up recruiting the first person you see and they leave a group after a TR, you're gonna be back in recruitment hell anyway. And worst case scenario, which I have seen this happen so many times now, I think I've seen this at least 4 times in new groups and a lot of times in reprog ultimate groups where a guy is on a different page dude blows up and your entire group disbands. It was, yeah, it's really bad. Shit happens. And I understand that being selective is very painful because it feels like you have high expectations, but I promise it will save you a headache in the long run. Although I have to say though, like having expectations is good and all, but it's kind of to a certain degree. Don't be too picky. Nobody's gonna be perfect.
Yeah,
But
I
yeah, it's
Sorry, not
basically a ticking
perfect.
time bomb. Yeah.
yeah, I think yeah, like this is somewhat of an ideal thing. I think you do have to take circumstances into account. So if you're recruiting and the raid tier's coming out in like 2 weeks, you don't really have time to be picky, and you just kind of need to swallow that and just move forward. But if you
Wow,
do
that
find yourself with the time, you should take the time. I think, how long did we recruit? Um, when we were building this group, it was like over a
oh,
month,
this
2 months.
one a month and a half, I think.
Yeah, and that was for one person, right? One or
Y-
two people.
yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
we ended up having more time than we thought because no more ultimate. But we originally
Mm.
we did
Woo!
spend like a month and a half just to fill one slot for the ultimate that was going to come out in like 3 months. So we basically spent half of our time just recruiting someone.
I think it was a special thing for us too, because we have people from different data centers.
That's true.
It's even more difficult. I have experienced the 2 weeks recruitment thing though. That was in Move T. We only filled our group 2 weeks before T, I think, if I'm not wrong. But yeah, that shit's terrible. That's why have expectations, but not so high to the point where nobody can fit at your expectations, or very little people can fit expectations. I guess it depends on your group too. So yeah. And
By little
speaking of
people.
building a group, don't try to build your group alone. That's kind of what I realized after being in so many groups. I feel like, even if you don't appoint a leader, there will always be one in every group. Like like everyone will look for that person, no matter what, even if they're not the leader. But that doesn't mean you have to shoulder everything by yourself. Building a group from the ground up is really, 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 really difficult. And usually, I would really only recommend it if you can start with a core group of about 3 to 4 people who you can trust and form the basis of the group. And there's a lot of uncertainty when it comes to roles and recruiting. It just really helps when you have a few set people in a group that can help solidify your plans, even if it's just a little bit.
Yeah, I think the reason why I think I do want to stress that point, and the reason why is I've got, when it comes to getting messages and questions about recruitment, I've gotten a surprisingly high amount of messages that were simply along the lines of, it was simply along the lines of like, hey, I want to get into raiding, I want to get into raid leading. I'm gonna build a group. Like, do you have any tips for me? And I'm just like, whoa, whoa, whoa! Like, don't bite off more than you can chew. Like, building a group is extremely difficult. Please do not do this. I think the only way, how do I describe it? I think like if you do want to start raid leading, there are two avenues to do that, and I think one of them is to basically start a group with people that you mostly already know, maybe people you've raided with in the past. That is somewhat similar to like having the core 3 or 4 people. The other way is basically to take over a group when the previous leader leaves. That unfortunately, that you don't really have control over that. That's just like the opportunity just comes. That's how I actually started raid leading. My UCOB raid leader left, and then I just kind of took over the group. But I would recommend one of those two. I think like trying to build a group with like 6 or 7 people that you don't even know, and like especially if you don't have any experience yet, it's going to be really, really difficult. So you want to make it as easy as possible. Yeah.
I can add on to that. I feel like if you're trying to build a group, it would be like ideal that, I mean, it would be ideal although it's obviously not always possible, that you have like a core, and the core is like, players in each role. Like, I feel if you had a healer, a tank, and a DPS, that would already be a very solid foundation for a group. If you knew you could trust them, because then they could, each one of them could be like responsible for like figuring out what they are looking for in their own roles. So that's something to keep in mind.
Yeah, I think in the past that I've seen, like my experience with like either building groups or being in groups that were like being built, it's usually like 3 or 4 people who know each other really well, and it's not like it's just like 3 DPS players, right? You typically will have like a tank, a healer, and a DPS, or like a tank and 2 healers, or something like that. Um, or the players are flexible, but yeah, I agree with what you're saying, Q.
Nodders.
Should we move on?
Hi. So now we can talk about my favorite tool for recruitment and scheduling and literally everything that nobody wants to do, which is creating spreadsheets. Ooh. There's probably like other tools for it, but I feel like spreadsheets are just very universally friendly for dumb people like me.
Don't say that.
But then it's just so easy to set up. There's just no reason to try to memorize everything, right? Like keep everything in your head or whatever, in or across multiple Discord channels, DMs, group chats, and all that. And it just sounds really annoying, so unorganized. So instead, you can use spreadsheets to keep track of things like, well, personally, these are the things that I keep track of when I make a group specifically for, or not make a group, but lead a group. For a new tier would be recruitment, scheduling, rate prep checklist, melding priorities for your new crafting set, your potential crafters and gatherers, like the team, your support team, timelines of the fights, materials, BIS, loot rules, and all a bunch of other stuff too. It pretty much just goes on and on. And it's mainly because I'm the kind of person that cannot stand a mess, and I hate it when everything is very unorganized, so I will always take things into my own hands after a while and make a spreadsheet.
I just want to say, I am not that person. My life is extremely disorganized, but
Jesus Christ.
like what I want to say is like on the flip side, if you are like me and you're just a mess, then you need the spreadsheets to be effective at what you're doing, or else you'll just constantly forget stuff, and things will just like kind of fall apart. So
Yeah.
it's basically no matter who you are, the spreadsheets will help you unless you have a, like a photographic memory or something. Like I don't know, but yeah.
Yeah, unless all 8 people in your group have a photographic memory, then you don't need a spreadsheet. Otherwise, in every group that I form, I think even for repro groups, actually, I always have a spreadsheet dedicated to it. But the only exception that I wouldn't, the only things that I wouldn't put in a spreadsheet would be strats, because the images on Google Sheets can be a bit wonky sometimes, and if you view it on your phone, images don't seem to turn out well. So I would just use a dedicated Discord channel for it. Honestly, there's not really much to talk about here because it's up to your group what they want to do with it.
I,
But I would have to say that being organized is really important, and personally has been most helpful with recruitment and scheduling once your group is formed.
yeah.
To add something here, I think if you're new to raid leading, you might think, oh, there's how do I prepare all these spreadsheets? Do I have to like make them all myself? So my suggestion is if you're looking to get into raid leading and you're interested in like getting spreadsheets to manage it, ask Ori and he'll maybe he can provide you with
What?
some.
I did not sign up for this. Okay. The spreadsheets we have are Stall made them, so you can ask her.
Oh, responsibilities?
Well, okay, but yeah, I spreadsheets are really important. I have made spreadsheets in the past. Stalls are better, which is why we use them. Um, but in addition to the things that Stall said, like I actually do all of my planning in spreadsheets. I just like what we do is we have one spreadsheet, and then there's like a Discord channel that's called like planning, and it's basically the only post in that channel is just this spreadsheet, and it's also pinned, even though it's the only post. So it's like it's there, and if you never need to find it, it's there. And then like in the spreadsheet, we have different sheets for different things. So like planning, recruitment. Most recently, I started trying to plan what we're gonna do as preparation for the 6.0 raid tier. So I got my team to fill out some like experience stuff, and I'm planning to like write out some plans and like scheduling in that spreadsheet. Um, yeah, it's too bad we didn't show your scheduling spreadsheet because that one is pretty cool looking.
I'll link it later, like while you guys are talking. I'll make a copy.
Okay. But cool. Want to move to the next thing?
Sure. So, a bit earlier, we talked about how you should be, well, I guess you could say picky or, just be careful. Try to be more like conscious about who you're recruiting. Recruit people who fit the group well, and this will help with the longevity of your group. And while that's true, there's another thing you have to ensure, you have to do to make sure people don't leave. And I think it's important that you have to build your team's culture. As the raid leader, it's your responsibility to build an environment that all your team members can feel safe and comfortable in. And to do this, there's a few questions you can ask yourself. Questions like, are there things that come up during raid that make others feel uncomfortable? Do my team members trust each other? Do my team members respect each other? And yeah, ask yourself these questions and try to think from the perspective of your team members. And it's also important here that you lead by example. Like if you, the raid leader, shows up late to the raid or you're not prepared, then the other people will think, oh, that's okay. Even the leader's doing this. Why don't we do this too?
Yeah. I think like man, culture is a really hard thing to define. It's like what is a team culture, and even like I have a very hard time explaining it to people. But I think like at a base level, you just want to know if your raid members are just happy with the state of things. Like, because if everyone's happy, then it's all is good, right? And honestly, you should just do this by asking your raid members directly, and you should take them seriously. And that's just a really easy starting point, right? And if people aren't happy and their problems aren't getting addressed, or in a worst case, if you don't take them seriously and they feel like there's no point in bringing up their problems anymore, they will definitely leave your group. Um, so if for the longevity of your group, in addition to, being a decent human being, you should think about these things.
Okay. Um, so another common problem that raid leaders face is, you know, okay, so you've asked the questions and you found out people aren't happy. So now you've got a conflict. What do you do about it? So I think to solve conflicts and problems, we need to refer back to the most important thing that we've talked about earlier. Start with your goals. Sometimes the solution to a problem that you encounter, the solution should be based on what your group is trying to achieve. And that should be the basis of your decision making. Let's say, for example, you've got a player who says, um, you've got players who say, they want to raid shorter raid times or they want to raid less. And I think if you, uh, they're not happy about the raid times. So to resolve this, you should look back at the goals of your group. If you're a chill group, a casual group, you're playing with friends, maybe, this is okay. Like people might be busy, they might then this is a solution that you might want to implement. But let's say if you're a hardcore group, and then this might not be what your group is the goal of your group is. So you might not want to shorten the raid time if your group needs to raid to achieve its goals. So basically, what I'm trying to say is when you are trying to resolve issues and conflicts, look to the goals of your group and uh, try to solve the problems based on that. Some Another issue that might help prevent conflict in the first place is to be constantly checking your bias. I think it's impossible to be completely unbiased, like whether you realize it or not. Everybody has some amount of subconscious bias, but it's best to try to notice and reduce it as much as possible. Typically, in a group, you can make a lot of decisions through a majority vote, like ask everyone, see what the majority thinks, and follow that decision. But it's quite likely that one or two people will find themselves in the minority more often than not. I I feel that it's best to just directly check in with your raid members every so often. Ask them how they're doing, how they feel about the raid group, and things like that. And this will help you determine if you've been unintentionally ignoring what someone wants, because you're always like, oh, I'm just doing what the majority of the group wants, but you may you know you may just not notice that this person is not happy about it. So to extend onto this, I think you should try to talk to your group members where they feel more comfortable. This could mean like, some people are more comfortable talking about this kind of thing in group chats. Some people would prefer to talk to you in a direct message. Some people might want to talk to you over voice. You should let the person you're talking to decide how they want to communicate with you, because they're most likely to have an honest conversation with you if they aren't nervous about, how they're communicating with you.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I think in addition to those group chats, or sorry, in addition to those like direct like one-on-one discussions you can have with people, like when you're having group discussions, which in my experience is basically the bulk of decision making, um I think there's a lot you can do to make sure that people who have dissenting voices are heard. And I still need to get better at this, but I think in most cases, if the first person, how do I describe this? Okay, if your group is discussing if you want to do alt clears or not, for example, um, that if the first person says like, yeah, I want to do alt clears, and the second person says like, oh yeah, me too, then it becomes difficult, or people often like feel like they shouldn't speak up if they have a different opinion. If like they don't want to do alt runs, they feel like, oh, it seems like everyone else wants to do it, so I just won't say anything. But I think it's best to actually directly ask, like, hey, does anyone have a different opinion here? And you need to make sure that you're not trying to single them out. Like, make sure the way you say it is like to make sure everyone feels heard. Um, so this is like kind of like the whole comfort, whole trust thing. It's the raid culture stuff we talked about before, and I think goals might have been the most important thing. I think this is the hardest thing about being a good raid leader, and getting people to trust each other and talk openly with each other is something that I could probably talk for a really long time on, but we should probably continue because I'm worried we're gonna run out of time and not be able to answer any questions. So just keep going.
Okay. So with conflicts, I think
Oh,
sometimes you'll find yourself too exhausted to play mediator and search for solutions. And I think that happens. We're all human. But I think an important point is when you're trying to resolve issues, you've got to pick your battles. You just won't have the mental capacity to deal with every issue that comes up. So in this case, I think sometimes you just need to pick your battles and address the bigger issue, the priority issue first. And sometimes if it's a small issue, you can let it slide. I mean, not it's not that you should always do that, but prioritize bigger things first. For example, if you have two players arguing over which strategy to use, and then you've got another player who is like not giving call outs when they should. I think you need to address the bigger issue here first, which is the players arguing, because arguing players, it might blow up big into a bigger thing. They might get very angry with each other,
It
and
does happen.
yeah, especially over strategy. But yeah, so
Yeah.
yeah, address the bigger issues first, and some don't overwork yourself trying to fix everything that happens.
Yeah, I think a good example of this is um, I have heard this about if you're a few week one groups. Now this point does apply to pretty much any raid group, but the examples I know, the people I know, this is a week one group example. So for groups that try to clear Savage week one, typically we require all the members to have pentamelded gear because it helps a lot with the damage check. But sometimes people just like don't want to get that gear because they don't have enough. They don't want to like get the gil. They don't want to get the materia or whatever. They just don't want to do it. And like honestly, sometimes you have to ask yourself like, is it worth it to try and convince or force this person to get that gear? Like if your group's trying to clear as fast as possible, or you think you won't meet the DPS check, then that's something that might be worth fighting. And if you think the gear kind of doesn't really matter, like, oh, you're probably going to clear later in the week anyway, or you feel like this raid member won't listen to you no matter what you say, then you can just let it go. It's very situational dependent, but you don't have to fight every battle. I can't tell you which battles to fight, but just keep in mind you don't have to fight every battle.
Yeah, I think Horizon's talking about this in the context of a week one group, but you can apply this to you know, group players in all kinds of groups. You might have a player. Your group might not be week one, but you still might have a player who doesn't want to cap their tomes because they're too lazy, or they might not want to use food and potions, and you've got to decide for yourself. Does something like this affect your group to the point where you will uh basically uh basically confront the issue directly, and or do you want to let it slide? And that's for you and your group and your goals to decide. Also, it's important, please don't take all the responsibility onto yourself. I think that's a one-way ticket to burning yourself out and quitting raiding completely. Try to split responsibilities across the group. For example, you as the raid leader, you might want to handle conflict resolution while another person in the group handles in-game shot calling, and another person handles scheduling and organization or spreadsheeting. Whenever something needs to be done, it doesn't have to be you who has to do it. It just makes sure you need to make sure that it gets done, but it doesn't need to be you personally. So this allows you to let people handle the roles that they're most suited for. For example, uh, in our current group, Ori does the shot calling and he makes the big decisions. Stal does the organization and spreadsheet management, and my role is I try to be helpful, but I don't actually do much. And
Cute.
Q helps
yeah,
a lot.
and
He has a lot of experience. It helps a lot. Don't no downplaying yourself.
yeah, and in my previous group when I was leading, Star would do the spreadsheeting and organization because she's very good at it. She's a very organized person.
Yeah, so
So fine,
basically
yeah.
share the pain, share the suffering, because sharing is caring.
Thanks, Star.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ori. So I think let's talk about red flags and things that you should look out for. If in your group you've got people talking behind each other's backs, like they're sending secret Discord DMs to each other saying, "Oh, this guy sucks," or I hate this person. Then I hate to say it, but your group is probably doomed. This is less of a red flag and more of a death flag. It's like the group probably will not be able to continue in its current state because it's an indication that people don't feel comfortable bringing up issues to the raid group. I don't know, for whatever reason, and it usually ends up building resentment. And if you just ignore it, it'll eventually blow up into some big conflict, even if the original cause is something that wasn't that big. If you can see this behavior as it's starting, maybe you can still try to step in and do something about it. For example, if someone starts complaining to you in DMs, you can have an honest talk with them about it. Do they just need to vent a little bit, or are they, seriously annoyed at something? Does something actually need to be changed? Sometimes people are just having a bad day and they just need to cool off a little. But you should do your diligence, your due diligence. Make sure that try to stop these things from turning into something bigger. And if you can do that, it'll help you out in the long run. Another red flag that I've noticed is if you've noticed that group members are starting to, find reasons not to be able to raid very often. Um, a lot of times people won't directly bring up their issues to you or to the group because they're afraid of creating conflict. And what I found from my experience is that if players aren't happy with something in the group, they won't say it or they won't bring it up to you or anyone else in the group. Instead, their availability will just start decreasing. They'll become less and less, they want to raid less and less. They're very busy. And of course they might actually be busy, but as you might want to look into it if you feel that the players suddenly, become much more reluctant to raid. It can be a sign that they're not happy with the group.
Yeah. I don't think I have any personal experience with that, but I mean just thinking logically, it's like, yeah, that makes sense. Like I could totally see people doing that. Um but yeah, okay, so I believe that is the bulk of it. So before we get to Q&A though, I do want to talk about some miscellaneous things that I learned over the past few years. I promise I'll be quick because we don't have a lot of time. Although we can go over, right? It's not like we have a real time limit. And I do want to address these questions. So let me just tell you some more miscellaneous things that I found very useful. Or rather, I would have found very useful if I knew it before I started raid leading. So first, no group lasts forever. So even if you attain the perfect group as a raid leader, that is generally your goal. Real life just gets in the way, and sometimes people's goals shift. And while at one point maybe all 8 of you may have like shared the same goals and the same drive, the same mentality, that might that might change. It might no longer be the case, and that's okay, and that's just life. And in fact, you might be the person whose goals shifted. And in those cases, you shouldn't be afraid to either replace those members or replace yourself in the case that your goal shifted and recruit someone else to fit the goals of the group because things change. And ideally, your raid members will understand this and you can leave or replace someone amicably. But also, sometimes people don't understand, and sometimes one of your raid members will just be impossible to reason with. Another might selfishly just put their own personal goals first, don't care about the group's health at all. Personally, I like to trust my raid members by default. Hope they're acting with good intentions, but there are times where you just have to accept that a person in your group might be irresponsible, immature, a bad teammate, and it is better to just kick that person from the group. And making the decision to kick someone is really hard. Whenever I've had to do it, I've always asked myself, like, is this the wrong choice? Like, can we work things out? Like, maybe there's a misunderstanding. Like, maybe we can improve on things. And the thing is, like, you'll never know if it's the right choice, but you have to make a decision. And it might be the wrong decision, and you will make wrong decisions. But trust me, it's better. You should make a decision. The flip side, or the alternative, is to basically sit around and do nothing. And that usually just creates more pain because then you have to make a decision down the road. And forgive me if I don't give any concrete examples of this. Trust me, though, this happens. But as I alluded to, like, raid leading is fucking hard. Like, it's really, really hard. Like, I cannot stress how difficult or stressful it can be at times. You basically have all of this responsibility. You're constantly thrust into situations that you're probably unfamiliar with, especially if you're like me and you had no leading experience before. And these are situations where you'll never know with certainty what the best way to proceed is. And as I said, you will mess up. But see, that's the thing. Everybody messes up. So don't beat yourself up over those mistakes, right? I'm willing to bet that me, Stal, and Q, we all constantly make mistakes, even after a collective 8-9 years of raid leading. And honestly, sometimes those mistakes can be bad enough to fracture raid groups completely. Like, I recently formed my new raid group this year in January, and it's not because I just want to go and create a raid group. Like, our last raid group had some problems, and as the raid lead, I felt like I'm accountable for that. So like I am just like you, like I am still learning, but like what I want to point out here is that's the important part, right? When you make a mistake, you have to learn from it, and I can't possibly teach you every little thing about raid leading that I know, and what I know is probably a very small subset of what's out there to learn. But like the best way to grow is to make mistakes and to learn from those mistakes. And I feel like if anyone, as long as you keep those in mind, I think anyone could be a great anyone can be a great raid leader. But yeah,
Mhm.
I just really, really wanted to emphasize that because shit's hard, and don't give up.
We cry ourselves to sleep every night.
We didn't need to share that.
Fetch.
uh, okay, so let's get into Q&A. So this thing's scheduled to end in 10 minutes, but let's try to answer as many questions as possible. We can go over exclamation point Q&A in chat if you want the form to submit your question. Actually, let me share this with you guys. Can you guys? Sorry, this is very disorganized. I need to get this link here. Okay, I'm just sharing this link with other people. Let's see. So the first question we got was from Brian, and it's, how do you combat toxicity within a high level group? Q, do you want to answer this?
Oh.
Okay.
Hmm. Well, that's a good question, and something I think I failed to do in one of my previous groups. I think you've just got to decide like what as in a high level group you've got a goal, right? And yeah, you've got to decide, how much you want to prioritize the goal, and how much you want to prioritize the the players in the group. Like Ori said, playing with players that you don't get along with.
I I think
It's hard.
I think when it comes to high level groups, people tend to uh, endure toxicity because they feel like it's very difficult to recruit um, a person who uh, is at that skill level and is also not toxic. And I've definitely felt that way a lot in the past before, where it's like, oh, I'm really afraid of like removing this person from the group because finding another good player that's at our skill level is like gonna take a lot of time. And like everything else, there's a lot of situationally dependent things. But I think there's a reason why, at least like there's a reason, or in my head, I immediately start thinking about like kicking people because I think toxicity, assuming people in the group are bothered by it, um, I think it's really hard for people to change themselves to not be toxic. Now, of course, I feel like you should give people second chances. I feel like you should, talk to them. Anytime there's a problem, my recommendation would be to talk to the person about the problem. And in an ideal world, they'll take it seriously and try to improve, kind of as a warning thing. But when it comes to toxicity, I kind of feel like that won't work. And in fact, a lot of the times it won't work. And in those cases, sometimes you just kind of need to kick them. I don't know. Do you?
I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah. Speaking
when
from Oh, sorry. You go
no,
first.
you first, Q.
Okay. Speaking from my experience, I was in a group back in Sigmascape, which was a very good group. You know, we got like top 5 in Sigmascape and like 6th in Ultima Weapon Ultimate. But I really didn't enjoy raiding with them, and eventually I left that group. And well, I mean, it wasn't like I left that group, and in the long run, I think that was the right choice. And eventually, I think I there were players in there which I felt they were very toxic and I didn't get along with them. And eventually I made a decision to, play with one of those players again, and I think that was the wrong choice. So basically, when it comes to toxicity, I think you figure out what you are okay dealing with, and then trust your gut with that decision. Stick with it.
Yeah. Yeah. What I wanted to say when I was talking about like the hard to find people thing was that like it's still worth kicking the person if you, and I guarantee you there's someone out there who has the skill level of what you're looking for who's also like a nice person to play with. I guarantee you they exist. So I think it's worth searching for them. But Stall, you were gonna say something?
I mean, if people want to be toxic, they'll always be toxic. Can't help it. Just kick.
Yeah. All right. Next question.
Yeah.
Okay. This is from Anonymous. I had members of my previous static who combed through our T logs to find out how I was healing the fight. They were extremely critical and it was taking place behind my back. They were afraid to approach me about it because they were under the impression that I was too hardcore and I wouldn't listen to them because I parse higher than them. How would you handle this issue between static members as a raid leader?
Oh,
Uh,
I think my initial thought would be like if I was the raid leader and I caught wind of this, it kind of would depend on how I knew about it, right? Like for me, it's like did did like who came to me and tell me about this? Was it like the person who asked the question? I think what I would generally suggest is either I would directly talk to the people who are talking behind their back, or in the case where I think this might be successful, I would try to ask the person in question to just directly point blank just DM the other person and see what happens. Because if you, as long as you write a message that's like something like, like I'm really open to feedback and I want to improve as a player. As long as you show that you're receptive to what they're saying, they'll typically people don't respond aggressively. But it depends on how I feel about the relationship between those people in the group.
I think dude can also just. I mean, let's just say you guys are reading, right? Maybe you can just slip in a small message like, "Oh, is there anything that I can do better? I'm looking for feedback." Like, if you're too scared to DM, maybe you can start with that first, so at least people know that you're like open to accepting feedback. Because I know sometimes it's really tough, right, for you to just go DM the person straight away. So you can start with a small message and then try to like go along from there.
from my perspective, as I've mentioned in earlier, if people are talking behind each other's backs, it's kind of a big red flag. So
Chill.
if I was the group leader, I would definitely, I would have to go and ask these people why do they feel that, why do they want to talk about this like behind in like private chat, and try to find a solution with them.
Yeah, I think it can go two ways, right? Maybe these people are, toxic because they're talking behind the other person's back. Maybe the other person actually uh, comes across as like not receptive to feedback. It
Hmm.
really depends
Yep.
on how I personally, it would depend on like my personal judgment of the situation.
Yeah.
Can go either way. So let's move on to the next question. Hopefully that was a good answer. Is it possible to start a hardcore static from scratch? In other words, you try to recruit 7 people. Do you know of someone who has successfully done this?
What does
Um,
hardcore mean? Like, in week one clear, there's a lot that have successfully started a static, but for clearing as fast as possible, I don't really know any.
uh,
'Cause usually they just evolve into a week one group instead of you know, clearing in 1 to 2 days group.
yeah, I generally agree with that.
Um, recruit 7 people, as in you don't know any of them, so you just by yourself trying to build a static. It's quite difficult.
Yeah.
Um, we can like let's in um in Tombury when there weren't any hardcore statics before Sigmascape. So when the first hardcore static was built, it wasn't like recruited from people. It was people who knew each other basically. So it's quite difficult to build from scratch. But I think for a week one group, didn't
Totally possible,
totally possible.
actually.
Yeah,
Yeah,
didn't.
100%. I've seen people done it and they're
Hmm.
fine.
The people I've seen do it, I don't know if they had people they already knew in the group or not. Um, but I have seen people like who have never, all eight have never done hardcore before, and then they like get a week one clear. Um, World Prog is a little
Yeah.
that's not going to happen. I'm sorry, but as far as just
Yeah,
getting a
that
week
one's
one
tough.
clear, I think it's totally possible. But again, please try to recruit people you know to form a basis for the group. Um, we'll just move on. I don't. We actually got a lot of questions, so I'll try not to stick on one too hard as we keep going.
I think we're the last event in LunarCon today too.
Yeah. Oh, I think you're right. Yeah. Well, it. I think if you like live on the East Coast or other places around the world, it might be getting late, or maybe it's early. I don't know. It
Oh,
depends where you are. So, I want. Hopefully, we get to everyone's questions, right? Um, but if it hasn't been asked, where are the best places to find a group if you have no logs and are new to raiding as a whole? Um, I would say you should try. The thing about that is that like there is no place specifically for people who don't have logs. Like the best places to find a group are the subreddit, which is FFXIV recruitment, or on Discord, where your data center probably has a recruitment Discord. I know Aether has one. I'm pretty sure Primal has one. I know Crystal has one. I know Elemental has one for English speakers. Um, I'm sure EU has them. I don't know. I'm not on EU, but I'm sure they exist. And basically what you do is you write your post and you say that you don't have logs and you're new to rating, or you look for groups that are like recruiting people who are new, like a group of all new people. And while you're trying to look for a group, while you have your post up, I would also recommend um, trying to get some logs, I guess. The logs don't really matter, but basically trying to get some clears, trying to get some experience, right? I would recommend trying to grab a friend and hop into Party Finder, you know, get some experience in Savage. So the more experience you have, the better you look to the groups when you're applying to them, typically. But yeah, do you guys have
Yeah.
anything to add?
No, I think that's
yeah, pretty much it. Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
cool.
I guess you could try Party Finder, but I don't know if that's has a good
Party
success rate or not.
Finder
Yeah,
probably get fought about the RMTs happening there. To be honest.
you you can do it. I mean, like if yeah, I mean, there's no harm in doing it, but usually Reddit and Discord are more successful. Um, okay, advice for keeping morale or spirits up when you hit significant roadblocks, such as when being hard stuck on something, losing a member, or a string of absences. I actually think these situations are different. Um, uh, I am not the best when it comes to morale. I'll tell you that. Typically, I have other people in the group who are good at it. But I will say, when you're hard stuck on something, you just need to tell people. You just need to just say like, it's not a big deal, like, because it's not. At least I don't think it is. And it's like, how do I describe it? Like, you just need to say something along the lines of just like, all right, guys, we got this. Like, yeah, I'm not good at this. I'm sorry. But basically, you like try not to be negative in voice chat, and like try not to like blame people, and that will prevent bad morale from setting in too quickly in the first place. Maybe again, maybe Q or Stall have better things to say.
Probably not me. I'm a very emotional person. I mean, people can tell when I get mad and stuff.
Yeah, that happened in E11, or oh wait, no, it happened in T.
Yeah.
Who did you? Yeah, that did happen.
I try to make awful jokes to keep up morale.
It works.
Yeah,
It worked.
it's good because then we can all direct our negative emotions at him instead.
Usually I just say it's fine. That's pretty much it.
Yeah.
There is one thing maybe I could think of that's relevant. I had this raid member who would anytime
Oh,
every time anyone messed up, he would let off this exasperated
Oh
sigh.
yeah.
It's just like, oh my god! I just told him to to stop, just mute yourself or something because it was so tilting.
Yeah. I think that's like in-game morale. I think for something like a string of absences, the solution to that is to be like, why is this person missing raid so much? Like, that's really disrespectful of other people's time, and that's actually like just a problem you have to fix, and then the morale will be fixed with it, typically. Um, and also like if it's planned absence, like someone is gonna, needs to leave for vacation or whatever. Um, just get a sub. That should help a little bit. Um, cool. Excuse me. Next question's from Gumi. Um, how does one start raid leading with the goal of week one? In Elemental, it's super small. The chances of recruiting likelihood of correct players is super slim, where everyone you've raided with are more than likely in a group beforehand. Correct players, as in more on consistency, okay attitude, and a little bit of competency. Oh, gummy. Dude, okay, I see. My bad. Well, you're Gumi now, sorry. But yeah, do you guys have thoughts on that?
well, see, if I can tell you how, I wouldn't be in NA now. So, sad.
Mm,
Elemental is just. We always face the issue of having a very small player base. Because we're in the JP data center, right? And only one JP data center has English players. And out of it's kind of like, if you look at any, everyone's English, but how many hardcore groups or week one groups are there? There's not a lot, let alone an elemental, a JP data center with English players.
I feel
So
if you're trying to start raid leading a week one group on Elemental, um, I think if you're trying to build a new group, it's definitely very hard. You probably have to look for players. You can't like pick up. You won't find players who are like, oh, I'm week one experience and I don't have a group and I'll join your group. It's very difficult. You probably have to look for players who have like the character and the traits you want, and then build the group up from there. And it might take some time. I think I think Jeffo, he kind of did something like that.
the thing is, Jeff had a couple of friends with him too, so that helped out, right? But if you want to start raid leading and make a group from scratch, like that's just gonna be tough. You definitely have to take some risk. Like I think you took risks with AlphaScape too.
Yeah, I picked up Stal.
I've also
Yeah.
recruited a few people who don't have week one experience before. Actually, Dion, he's never did hardcore ever, I think, but we recruited him anyway because we felt confident with him. And some people in our current raid group are like that too. So sometimes
Dion
you gotta scout for
people.
talent. Oh yeah, Momo too. Actually, I feel like we do that a lot now that I think about it.
Yeah, you really just have to jump into it and take some risks. Cause if you wanna already look for experienced people, they're probably already taken somewhere else.
You can also just abduct people from a different data center, like Q did to us, because we play on JP now.
Oh, yeah, that's our master plan. Finally worked out.
Yeah.
Sorry, Dion.
Uh, oh yeah, Tolls was stolen first, so I forgot about that too. Yeah, we have
Oh,
stolen people from other data centers. You gotta do what you gotta do, okay? Anyway, it's hard. Basically, it's hard. But yeah. Okay. Next question is from Sign. Uh, now I'm worried I'm not pronouncing these names correctly.
nah, you got it, dude. I believe in you.
What if your team members find you extra for constantly checking up on them and how they feel? I've had this happen to me before, and it led me to stop asking members in the future, as I noticed their responses would almost always be it was okay or something along those lines.
You're
Um,
such a nice person.
I I think that if someone finds it overbearing, you can stop asking that particular person. It also depends how often you're asking. You can ask different people at different intervals, right? Some people like every month, some people every few months, maybe some people once per raid tier. Um, you know, different people need different pacing. And if someone's annoyed by it, what I would say is something along the lines of like, I understand this can be frustrating, but I'm just trying to make sure that people are happy with the group. So please bear with me, that type of thing, right? Just like try to be humble and like try to get them to understand where you're coming from. Um, the other part of the question, which is the responses not being very good, people just saying, oh, it's fine without saying what they really feel. Um, that's a really hard one. And I think that kind of comes down to the trust that we were talking about before. Uh, I think you need to. How do I describe this? I've not found the key to this, and I don't think there is like a single key to this, and it's very person to person dependent. But you need to figure out how to make people comfortable with sharing any potential issues they might have, because people typically tend to be very reserved about that. So you could lead by example and talk about the issues you have, maybe even with yourself. You could talk about you can. One thing I find very useful, which I mentioned before, was if they ever mention anything that's even like slightly like in the realm of not being happy, like you follow up on it with them and be like, hey, like I heard you, like I know you said this, like something going on, or like I'm the type of person to over worry, so maybe nothing's going on, but I just want to check in to make sure everything's okay. And then if you do stuff like that, people tend to trust you more, because you are looking out for them, right? So, but do you guys have any input?
You're a nice person.
Me?
Is that all? No, not you.
Okay,
Sign.
good.
I mean, you're nice too, Ari, but I just meant like sign.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
My experience is like I think I don't know, my ideal group would be that a group where you could trust everyone to the point where they'll be responsible for themselves, and then you don't have to check in on them. But that's an ideal. It's not a reality. So you do have to check in on them, and if people are upset at that, then maybe check in on them less. But I think it's still something that's worth doing.
Okay.
What he said.
Sad. Chat calling me out. Come on, stall.
No way! I don't mean it that way.
Okay. Apologies if this is long. All of my raid leads abandoned the group and I was left to lead it alone. I tried for a little, but people had no motivation, never communicated in our server. All were really passive when I reached out to them individually and never contributed to getting things done so we could raid. I ended up looking for a new group. What are some things I can do to avoid this in the future? I don't know if the next question is a follow-up to this question, but let's just address this question. I personally, if I was in a situation like that, I would just leave. I would be like, these people clearly, I mean, at the very least, right, you can say they have different goals from you, because like or different mentality, right? You want to get things done and they don't. So and they want to be passive and just kind of let things be. And you have very different approaches to the game, so you shouldn't be playing with each other. It's fine, right? Honestly, as far as trying to not let this happen again, I'm a little I'm thinking a little along the lines of like, I'm not sure how often you'll be in a situation where multiple raid leads abandon a group. That's like, I feel like if I was in that situation, it's more likely that the group is like bad enough to keep pushing out all the raid leads. So that kind of sounds like a red flag that the group is bad to me, like was bad. That's why the raid leads left. So if I was in a group like that, I would just leave the group. But I don't think that happens very often.
I feel like this isn't a you problem. I think it's just your group is collapsing and it's beyond, like you can't save it anymore. I don't think it's a you thing.
Yeah. Next question then.
Yep.
I believe this question is, how do you get your raid members to take on responsibility? From Shira. I believe this question was in reference to when we talked about how you should split responsibility. I would say that you can't force people to take responsibility. In an ideal world, your raid members, at least some of them, will want to take responsibility. If you're in a group where all 7 other people don't want to do any raid leader responsibilities, like no one wants to do scheduling, no one wants to do like planning, no one wants to do like conflict resolution, no one wants to do I don't know. There's so many things you have to do. It's like shot calling in game. If no one wants to do any of those things, I'd be like, where did I go wrong in recruitment? That's what I would think. If you're already in that place, that's pretty bad.
Yeah. Stal, how did I get you to do spreadsheets and recruitment for me?
I just did on my own because I was sick and tired of waiting. Because people would just take so long and things were just not organized. Nobody planned shit, and I was just so tired of waiting because like I mentioned, I'm really anxious, right? So I can't keep having the thought of like, what if the group doesn't fill up? So I just took things into my own hands.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
think
it's
like
bullshit.
what you can also do is when things come up, you say like, "Hey, can anyone handle this for me? Like, I'm dealing with this right now." And if no one volunteers, you could directly ask the person you think that would be best or most likely to do it. And you can say like, "Hey, can you do this for me?" And if they say no or they don't do it, I
You
feel
kick
like
them. Oh no.
that I wasn't gonna go that far, but I was gonna say I feel like that's a problem on its own. Um, yeah. Anyway,
Then you kick them. I
that
don't
is a
actually kick them. Maybe they're a
potential.
nice person.
There's a potential thing that might happen. Anyway,
Way of Stal.
we have so many questions to get through. Okay.
This is so fun.
How would you handle a group that is encountering a huge prog wall and isn't able to progress even after weeks of progression, and there's not one person in specific that is hindering the group?
And a group that's encountered a huge prog wall. You kick them?
No, they
Person.
specifically said there's not one person. You kick everyone, the whole group is kicked. There's no group left.
I don't feel that is there a mechanic in this game where the only mechanic in this game where I could think that this might happen is if you're doing ultimates. I don't think there's
Savage
if
is
there's
not very
if you're in
likely.
Savage and you're stuck on a wall for weeks, then and there's not one person causing it, then I think as a group you just gotta work on fundamentals.
I think like
It really depends on what the wall is. Is the wall DPS? Is it that, you know, people take turns messing up? Let's say you're doing lions in E12S and, you know, every pull someone else messes up, then
What if it's like wormhole?
well, one, it's ultimate, right?
I
Yeah,
It is
but like
expected.
we proc, right? Let's just say you proc this shit for like a month. And the
I don't
group
know.
still can't consistently do wormhole and people start it's like that's usually a huge prog wall, right?
oh yeah, keep going.
No, you
Then
can go. Oh wait, sorry. Start you go.
Yes, I'll keep going.
I feel like prog walls because DPS is in my opinion, DPS is the easiest prog wall to get over. Because it's easy to improve on rotations and stuff compared to consistency, awareness, and all that kind of stuff. So I'm guessing this is a mechanical prog wall, and I think for us we usually just grind until we get it right, right?
Yeah, but if they're stuck on weeks,
I think
sorry,
our
you go.
perspective is not good because all 3 of us do hardcore rating. But I think the
Yeah.
biggest there's 2 things that I feel about this. One, you should definitely ascertain, like 100% confirm that there actually isn't people that are holding the group back. Because in my experience, some people are always just better than others. That's just how it is. And that's not saying like you have to single a person out for being worse, but you need to get a handle on who's messing up what's the biggest problem, and and what's the biggest problem. So you need to like know like, hey, this person tends to mess up this part of the mechanic. This person tends to mess up this one, and then you can judge them in priority order. Like this problem is worse because it happens more often. Then you need to figure out why they're messing up, and then you need to talk, and then you can work with them on how to improve it. And obviously that depends on the mechanic, but like typically someone will fundamentally misunderstand something about the mechanic. They won't understand the strategy, or they just actually like think that they should be doing something else. Like for example, we talked about lions, or Q brought up lions, right? If you have someone who fundamentally misunderstands where you're supposed to stand, if you get the big lions, then you will only wipe to that 50% of the time because they will get the small lions half the time. And like stuff like that might obscure the fact that they actually just don't know how to do like the mechanic. Not because like they're faking it, but they just think they know how, but they actually don't understand the strat. So I would investigate stuff like that.
I guess this has happened. Now that I think about it, like it has happened in my reprog groups, but not to like weeks of prog extent. Maybe just a couple of days. But that's because we have cleared people, right? So usually, what I do is that I don't tell them how to solve the mechanic. I would just, before we even reach the mechanic, I'll just say like, yeah, you can just read up whatever you want, and then when we get there, then I will pull up the diagram and everything. I'll be like, okay, like if this happens, you go here, 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 because this is how the mechanic. I feel like one of these things is also because people just memorize where to go, but they don't understand how the mechanic works.
Yeah.
And I think if they learn that how the mechanic works in itself instead of just memorizing where to go, it makes it so much easier. Like you can adapt to literally anything. So I think if you could sit everyone down for like half a raid session or whatever and pull out VODs and diagrams and everything and just clarify everything you need to know at that point, I think you will start progging after that.
I think I agree with that. And also, Maltai brought up something in chat. He said another big thing is noticing what others are doing so you can help point out mistakes faster and help them understand. I think that's kind of a bit of what I was alluding to before in terms of like reviewing VODs. Either whether it's like watching other people play as you're playing or you just review VODs later, like being able to understand why people are making mistakes is the most important thing when it comes to improvement. Because if you don't know what's going wrong, how could you possibly solve it, right? So, do you guys have anything else to add?
No, not for this question.
Don't kick them.
Wow. Okay. Here's a question from Kazel. When you think a member of the group maybe have a problem or your gut feeling makes you feel like there's something that needs addressing, how would one go around it without being too intrusive or pushy? This is a problem I faced with a group I led for a year, and my inability to decide whether to act or not in a timely manner started eroding the group until I decided that best course of action was to disband it. I think the best you can do is just directly ask people. I also think the gut feeling thing is a bit more about like recruitment, right? You get that gut feeling that you shouldn't recruit this person. But when it comes to a gut feeling that you're having a problem with the raid, I think you should just ask the person directly. That's like, it feels like, just say like, oh, it feels like, such and such problem is happening, or like you feel this way, that you're not having a good time with the group. Like, is there anything I can help you with? Or maybe everything's fine and I'm just like have a wrong intuition. But if there is something wrong, like, can I help you with it? Something like that. But I'm pretty direct when it comes to that, so I don't know. What do you guys think?
I'm really bad at this. That's why I just do the scheduling.
Q? Okay, Q's dead. Sorry.
No,
okay.
I'm thinking it's, yeah, it's a lot of times, I get, it's like it's easy to know something's wrong, but sometimes it's hard to figure out exactly what's wrong, and it's hard. Yeah.
there are times where people won't even recognize the fact that they themselves have a problem, and at that level, it's like what I was talking about before. There's like nothing you can do about it. Sometimes your raid members will put you in a position where there's nothing you can do. As the raid leader, like obviously you want to do as much as you can. You always want to reflect on like everything you could have done to solve a situation, but sometimes it's just you couldn't have done anything. Um, and I also want to just point out that like this problem of like not figuring out whether you want to act or try to solve this problem that you may or may not exist, and just like getting stuck on it and not being able to make a decision. I would think that's pretty common. Um, so I just want to point out that, like, yeah, that's something I've dealt with many times before. Um, so good question, and it's difficult, and that's definitely something that you'll face a lot. Um, okay, can stalls share spreadsheet? Smiley
No.
face.
Next question.
Okay, what is the
What?
best way you?
I shared it already.
Yeah. And for anyone who watches YouTube VOD, I'll try to put it in the description. Um, what is the best way you found to boost morale after a ton of wiping? From Mike A. Don't ask me or stall, apparently.
Yeah, I'm Pagro as shit, dude. That's why I just keep quiet when I'm angry.
I think what we talked about before is just like try to make jokes, try to make sure people realize it's not a big deal. Honestly, okay, when you recruiting someone who's good at this is legitimately a thing you should think about. Like when you're recruiting people, we talk about how like you don't have to always think about in-game skills, like personality and stuff is also what matters. I like to think about the skills in my group as like a collective whole. Like, do we have a person in the group who's good at solving? Do we have a person in the group who's good at explaining stuff like that? And one of those things that you want someone to be good at is boosting morale. So yeah. How do you leave a raid group without the other members, some being my friends, feeling like it's their fault?
Oh no. Give them the talk.
I I feel like it's hard. I feel like if in my experience, like I feel like the best you can do is just explain honestly why you're leaving. Um, assuming your honest reason for leaving is not their fault, then you just explain it honestly, and then hopefully they won't take it too hard. And you can specifically say it's not their fault. But I think at some level, if you say it's not your fault and then they still think it's their fault, I don't know if there's a lot you can do about that. But I don't know.
Yeah, I'm that kind of person. Like, you would say it's not my fault, but I'll still think it's my fault. But quite frankly, you can't control what they think, right? So you just try your best to do whatever you can. But if they feel like it is their fault, then, like, you've already tried reassuring them. But if they overthink it, then that's on them. I'm sorry, I'm sorry.
Okay. Anything you got, Q?
It's my lunch.
Um, yeah, if you just you just be honest with the person, and sometimes they'll think you're lying, and it's unfortunate, but if you've been honest, then I don't think there's much more else you can do. It's not like you can like trick them into thinking it's not their fault. Don't like manufacture a situation.
Yeah.
Uh,
Uh, okay, so the next question is how do you balance the different learning rates between raid members?
Patience.
yeah, I think even like no matter how good your group is, people will still learn at different rates, and you know, you one thing there's a couple of things you can do from my experience. If you have members who are very stronger at mechanics, you can, assign them more things to do or more difficult roles for mechanics. An example I like to give for this is in UCOP, where in Heaven's Fall Trio, the towers, like
Oh,
the towers that are further from Nail,
Yeah, L4,
they're more
R4.
difficult. You have less time to react. L4, R4. So what I would do is I would try to assign members who I think are stronger mechanically to those towers. Uh, or you could also have like if you have members who are good at mechanics, you could have them like watch out for things, give call outs. But it's yeah, there will always be different learning rates between members no matter what group you're in.
I think
Yeah.
um, I think it depends on in what context this is. Like, oh, are you frustrated about the different learning rates? Do you want to do you want to make your group less frustrated? Do you want to learn how to help balance out the learning rates, right? If you want to balance out the learning rates, I think like Q said, you could do think about how you assign mechanical responsibility. Another example of that actually is like making your most mechanically consistent person do the callouts. I feel I think callouts that also specifically uh, are said in a way that help the less consistent members is good. I think explaining mechanics in a way that the slower learning members it tailors to their types of learning better. That's something you can do. I think, um, and as far as the frustration goes, I think what you should really do is you should think about it like players are a lot more than their than learning rate. Like, okay, so if someone is complaining to you, like they're venting to you that someone else is slower um learning, and they're frustrated about your prog speed, like you should really think about what other skills this person brings to the group, what unique things this person brings to the group, because I guarantee you every single person in your group brings something unique to the group. And sure they're a slower learner, but they're also better than the rest of you at other stuff. So everyone will have a different mishmash of skills, and I think emphasizing that is can help people understand.
I'm on the same page as Dion, where this is why I do as little as possible every TR.
No, that's just because you play bard.
Okay, too real? Let's not go there. I used to be the mechanics bitch, okay?
I know I was a bard main. Anyway, um, is it a dick move to join a group whose goals you thought lined up with yours, only to leave after 2 raid days when you found it wasn't? Uh,
Have you guys started
No, I think
raiding yet?
yeah, they rated 2 days stall.
Oh, 2 raid days. I personally don't think so.
I think if
But
it's
at
mid,
least give them a week or two to find members.
I think if it's mid prog, you're starting the tier, I think that could be a dick move. I think
Oh,
if you're on
yeah.
reclears or something, then or later in the tier, then I don't think it really matters that much. At the end of the day, if they advertise themselves incorrectly, that's their problem.
Yeah,
Um,
that.
but I will leaving mid prog is mid early prog is the first week or two after the tier comes out is usually a dick move.
What if
Uh,
it's just like a normal group? Let's just say normal midcore group reading right now. They are Fresh Prog and Savage and all that. And he did 2 raid days and then decided that it's not for him.
Well,
if
sorry, you go.
if I were concerned personally, I would say do you put in your 2 weeks notice? You're just hey, I don't really I don't really like this group, but I don't want to leave you guys so suddenly, so I'm gonna start looking for a new group, and I'll keep raiding with you guys because I don't want to leave you out to dry. And then if you guys
Yeah.
find someone, just you can just replace me immediately. But I'll also just leave after 2 weeks if you can't find anyone, because I do want to prioritize my own progression. That's what I would do.
Yes.
But
Yeah,
Give them
I
a
think
buffer to find members.
yeah, but I think if you realize that their goals don't line up with yours, then long term it's not going to work out, right? So yeah, don't
mhm.
just stick in there.
It's pain and suffering, dude. Trust.
Kotori says, "How do you address underperformance or tilt in members and also yourself?" Uh,
Good question.
I think
Just don't tilt forehead.
take a break. If people start tilting, if you notice that people start messing up earlier mechanics, just say, "Let's take 5-10 minutes. Get up, get some water, splash water on your face, do what you need to do, so you can come back and refocus."
Just don't be sitting at your desk. Like, go walk around. Don't look at the screen for a bit.
Yeah,
That would help.
if you take the 5 to 10 minute break to just sit at your computer and like go on Reddit or something, that's don't that's bad. Don't do that. You just wasted the break and you might be wasting other people's time. Like actually physically get up and walk somewhere. That helps a lot for your mental state. Splashing water in your face for me helps a lot. And sometimes you just need to figure out what works for you. But I think doing something in a short break will help you.
Actually,
We
took
took
30-minute shower break and someone fell asleep.
Okay, I don't know about a 30-minute break. A 30-minute shower break. That seems interesting.
Walking out of my room helps me. Like just not being in the zone.
Mm-hmm.
Just gotta find something. Maybe punching a wall. I don't know.
Okay. Uh, sorry, I'm just gonna keep going. So,
I'm
uh,
gonna get food. You guys continue first.
okay, from Anon, how do you handle a situation where you have progged with a specific strat through a specific mechanic, i.e., wormhole? You can see a light at the end of the tunnel, but players in the group are expressing interest in swapping strats due to distaste in the current strat.
Oh god.
My thing is just like, no, you fucking idiot. We're not changing strats, but that's just me. Sorry. Like, sorry. Switching strats is like a it is a huge time sink, especially for something that's so far into the fight that you only get to practice if you do like a 10-minute pull correctly, right? You have to get past Living Liquid and Brute Justice to even try Wormhole, and Wormhole is notorious for being something that is very difficult to learn. There are like I think there's like two reasons that I would ever consider this reprogging and like doing a different strat. One is that we need to do an uptime strat to reach the DPS check of the enrage. So we're going to change our strat for this mechanic to be a better strat. So for example, in Shiva, my group did that for the gaze mirrors, the holy one, because we were having because that helped give a lot of extra DPS at a very low cost. The other is if your strat is so horrendously bad that you think you will actually save time by switching strats, which is very, very, very unlikely. But especially when you've progged the strat enough that you feel like you see the light at the end of the tunnel. Like, I would not even change strats if you're doing Ilya, Light Rampant, and you learned about Ayatori. If you are, like, getting through it sometimes, I still would not change strats.
As long as you know that the strat actually works.
Yeah.
Like it's different if you're like trying to figure out a strat, but if because if you're trying to make a strat, but if you know the strat actually works and you've almost got it done, I don't think I would say in 95% of cases you shouldn't swap. And people might be upset with that because they're like, oh, my friend told me this strat is better, but it'll cost you more time to swap the strats.
I also think wormholes. I do want to point out one thing that can make switching strats better. If you were switching a strat that's very near the beginning of the fight, that makes it a lot better because one, you're gonna learn it way faster, and two, if your strat's bad, you're gonna wipe in the beginning of the fight it's gonna affect you a lot more often. Whereas like if your strat for the final mechanic of the fight isn't great, well, you can kind of just force it to work and then just clear and then not have to think about it. If it's the first mechanic, you're gonna have to do it every single pull. So that's something else to think about. Wormhole is closer to the end. So I really don't think you should change wormhole strats. That sounds really bad. And if they need convincing, maybe you should just send them a clip of us talking about that. I don't know.
You can't DPS a wormhole anyway, so.
Yeah. But yeah, let's just move on. From Nuna, what to do if the leader is toxic? I think you just leave, but I don't know.
Kick them.
Yeah. You can't. What? Well.
It's like how like I'm not firing you. You're not firing me. I'm firing you. You know that kind of shit.
Mutiny. I mean, like,
I could share a story about this.
Oh, please do, please do.
So there was this time where there was this raid leader. He got angry at some of his members raid members because he was there was a player he didn't like, and then some of his raid members went to help that player like fill in for a one of those Tuesday afternoon, like Tuesday before reset aimed clears, and then he got really upset at the raid members who did that, and he started saying like uh and then he was like saying things like well, I went and helped as well, but I wasn't in his group, but he was he started saying things like, oh, don't help this guy again, if not I'll take my raid group, I'll leave the FC, this kind of thing.
Oh,
And then his group was just like, what? No. And then eventually the group basically kicked him out for being the toxic raid leader. So if the leader is toxic and the rest of the group isn't, that doesn't agree with him, then you can, force the leader out.
Yeah.
see, I told you I said kick him. I wasn't wrong.
Mutiny is like kind of like a joke, but actually what I would see this typically ends with is like, as a collective, maybe not all the other people, but at least like a good chunk of you decide to leave the group because you don't like it, and then you just form a new group with like those 4 or 5 people being the core members of your new group. So that's typically what happens. So that's
Is
kind
that
of
what
like
happened
mutiny.
to us?
Let's not talk about that.
Oh,
Um, okay, so the next question is from I. It's hard to tell the fact. Wait. It's hard to tell the fact that your teammate. Wait. Sorry, I don't understand this question. Do you guys understand it?
oh, basically, mechanically, they're always fucking up at the same place.
Oh, and how do you
And
think you can do more about that?
can't do the DPS, can't do enough damage, and can't do it correctly. So how do I deal with things like that? Like should he teach or observe, and like what should he do in that case if people can't seem to do mechanics or DPS always at the same place? Basically, very inconsistent.
I think you talk to them directly about the mechanic. Ask them if there's something they don't understand about it. Go over the strategy again directly with them. Make sure they don't have any questions. No, don't apologize for your English. I just am bad at understanding anything.
It's okay, I got you, fam.
Yeah, thanks. Stall's got it. I'm just bad. She's just good at English. She's better at me
No,
than
no,
English.
no, 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 stop, no.
But yeah, I would just talk with them directly about it and try to get them to tell you like what they're having trouble with. Also, you should like check VODs and see what you think they're having trouble with. Typically, they'll mess up like a specific part of the mechanic, or like you can tell based on their movement that they like forget where to go or stuff like that. And like there's a lot of solutions for helping people with mechanics. Like you can print out diagrams and tape them to your wall if you don't have a second monitor. Just put on your second monitor. But if you don't have one, you can print them out and tape it to your wall. You can like give people like think like what's the word, mnemonics, like things to just say to themselves in their head to help them do the mechanic. Like changing callouts for that. I think there's a lot of different ways you can solve it. You need to figure out what works for that person. Yeah. You guys have anything to add?
Yeah, pretty much it. Yeah.
Okay. How do you feel about members who have a different pace compared to the group? How should I have handled it? So we did talk about that, but this person gives an example. So let's just address the example a little bit before we move to the next question. Back in AlphaScape, I had a member in the team who agreed to be in a 4-day-a-week group, but our first raid day does not happen on weekly reset. They proceeded to clear the floors we've cleared on their own using the character they applied for in the raid group, and then proceeded to bring another character with only crafted gear for our actual raid reclears in Prague. This resulted on much less DPS and harder reclear attempts. Eventually, the group broke up, and given this player feedback, and they saw nothing wrong with it.
Solution is to kick him.
I feel like you say like you are going to. Yeah, honestly, I actually agree with Stall here. I feel like if you've talked to someone and they can't figure out that they're being disrespectful to the other people in the group, then they don't deserve to be in your group. I think it's just that simple. But
It's clear disrespect, honestly.
Yeah.
If you didn't make this knowledge like clear beforehand and they still do it and they think it's nothing wrong, it's just clear disrespect.
Mm-hmm.
They're greedy.
Brim said, sorry, I'm moving on. Brim says, how do you feel about groups that take disciplinary actions against each other? Is that too extreme?
What does disciplinary actions mean in this case?
It sounds weird.
Yeah, I don't.
What's disciplinary?
I don't know what that means.
Is it like groups that fine members for what? You were
Sorry.
5 minutes late. You owe us 500,000 gil.
Uh, sorry. If you mean like raid members are trying to like punish each other, that seems
Oh,
weird and like a very unhealthy group environment. Um, I don't know. I'm sorry. Without more detail, it's very hard to say.
I've
Um,
heard of some
oh, so wait, clarification.
very interesting groups.
This is more of a
story
locking
time.
people out of gear stuff and Savage specifically. Oh, so like if someone's late, you don't let them get Savage gear.
Oh, that's too much.
I don't think that's worth it. But like for me, I'm like really goal oriented, right? So it's like I'm gonna give the gear to the people that will make re-clears as easy as possible, or the people who need it, so that we can raid next year, etc., etc. Like I don't think you gain anything out of like trying to punish people, right? Like I honestly think like trying to encourage people to behave a certain way through threat of punishment just like doesn't work. I just don't think that works. So
Yeah,
It's
I
kind
mean,
of like, sorry, you first.
it's kind of like, negative reinforcement versus positive reinforcement. It might have short-term results, but I don't think it's good for the long-term health of your group.
yeah, yeah. Okay. Hesswagon says, "What advice would you give to someone who wants to get into hardcore world prog?" Oh, there could be a whole thing on this. I feel, and this isn't really about raid leading, so maybe we should just skip this one. What do you guys think, for the sake of time? This one,
Yeah.
this one, there's a lot to it, but I don't know. Maybe you can ask us, any of us, at a later date, because I'm sure we're happy to talk about it, but just not now. Uwu says, how do you approach a raid member who tends to shut down during high stress times?
Oh no. Kick them.
No, okay.
No, what?
Um,
Is this Styles' answer to every question?
yes, apparently. I don't have a good answer for this. I have not raided with a person like this.
Same.
The question, I think the main question you should ask yourself is like, why is there high stress? The
Are
only
they-
situation I
are
can
they
think
okay?
of that should be that like high stress is like something that you will see is like hardcore progression. And I don't know. I just like haven't seen that out of any hardcore player.
I don't know. I think it might be, the person is stressing themselves out. Like they're thinking like, oh no, I can't mess this up. What if my team gets upset with me? It's probably something that's more self-inflicted. That's my perspective on it. And I do know players like that. And, it's just, there's not really that much you can do. My perspective is just, you got to just try to make sure that they understand that, people aren't going to be upset if they mess up. It's okay to make mistakes. But yeah,
Sometimes
I
people have IRL issues too
mhm.
that can, contribute to stress, even though it's not related. But
Yeah.
I've seen some people that are like that.
If it's being caused by a group environment, look into that. But apart from that, just try to be, try to create a
You can't do
welcoming.
much about it, really.
I'm going to close. I'm gonna close the questions in like 2 minutes. So if you guys have questions, get your questions in. I think we'll try to get through all of them. I don't know. How do you guys feel about that?
Yeah, I think we can try.
Okay, but I'm gonna close it in 2 minutes because if I don't, we'll fucking be here forever. I'm glad you guys
So
have so many
fun.
questions, but like, I want to go to sleep at some point. So, 2 2 minutes. Anyway, this is from Aggro. If you had a potential player who had Savage clears but parse Gray as a healer tank, would you take a chance on them or go for a higher parse player?
Higher parse for me. Because gray means you're not even aware of your fundamentals.
I think
I
Actually, it depends. I just
how
saw
much
it's healer
higher?
or tank. For healer, it depends because some people just really get cucked on it.
No,
Stuff.
no, no. If I actually disagree with that, I think if you get cucked on healer, you can still get at least a purple.
Also depends on gear
Unless your
though.
gear is bad. Yeah, it depends.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of details needed here. I would say like how much higher is the parse. Also, does the higher parse player just have like less savage clears? Like, did they just not clear savage, but they just parsed high? My worry then would be like, is this a person a greed lord that will mess up mechanics and stall up prog? But when they finally do clear, they get a good parse. I think both of those options are like, if I had to decide between that person and decide between the person who has savage clears but they parse gray, I would probably take neither. But it's also context dependent, right? Did they parse gray because they have bad gear? Did they parse gray because they died? Is it like they only have one clear and that was their first clear? Like, and then also you gotta ask yourself, like, does my group already have good damage? So it's fine if a healer does less damage because like the rest of us can make up for it. It really depends.
Need a lot of context actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, like what if they upgrade because maybe they only did like they only did 8 clears and they kept getting assassinated every week.
Yeah. Um
And
uh,
what kind of group are you recruiting for?
yeah, that's a really good point too. I will say gray as healer slash tank. I want to point out that like I think that's something to be concerned. Like just the fact that they're a healer or a tank doesn't mean that like that doesn't change my perspective on like how I feel about someone who would apply to my group who parses gray. Like whether they're a DPS or not, it's something that like I'm worried about because we talked about a lot about context, but at the end of the day, it still might just be they're lacking fundamentals, as Stahl said at the beginning, and
Yeah.
that is concerning regardless of what role you play. So it kind of depends. Um, okay, I'm going to close the questions now because like two just popped up, and it's been more than 2 minutes because I'm bad at this.
Hoggers.
Okay, sorry. Questions are closed. We still have like 15 to get through. Okay. Uh, what would Anonymous says? What would your recommendations for a raid group transitioning to harder content? My group cleared all the Eden raids at a casual pace, and Uwu, but it cut off. But now we're moving on to T. I am very worried about the skill level of certain players in the group and want to encourage them to get better. How do I do this without hurting people's feelings?
You clear ooh though.
Yeah, I feel if the group's good enough to clear Eden and Uwu, like in what ways are you concerned about the skill level? Is it damage? But T isn't really a damage fight either.
I
I'm guessing it's mechanics and consistency.
Yeah, I think it's worth noting that, Living Liquid and Brute Justice are quite hard compared to stuff in Uwu. Or, yeah. I think, like, being worried before the fact is something that I do a lot, and I don't think it ever is useful. I think you should worry about it. Like, maybe keep it in mind, but you don't necessarily have to do anything until keep an eye out. Like, oh, is this starting to become a problem? Then you can act. But maybe it just won't be a problem at all, and you don't have to say anything. I think if it does start to be a problem, I don't know, Q, what do you think?
It's just like you. I guess. Thinking about this, what does encourage mean here? It's like, hey, maybe you could do things like this and it might be better, or you better do this, or I'm gonna kick you like Star would do.
What? I mean, I would say that,
Oh
but
my
in a
god,
joking manner, yeah.
I
I'm
think
scared.
so the chat said two good things. One is incremental goals, and the other was like making sure people understand what they're getting into. like
Mhm.
understanding that T is more difficult than Uwu, and saying like, and with your goals being like, yeah, we're not going to clear at the same rate we cleared Uwu. You know, our progress is going to be slower. Um, yeah, I think the thing is like, I think at some level, if people cannot take negative feedback, if people cannot like deal with the fact that they aren't the best player and that they need to improve, I that's something that's like that's the type of player I would never recruit personally. I don't know how to. I know ways to help people uh, be more receptive to negative feedback. Right. Uh, there's the common thing called like it's called the shit sandwich. Okay, it's like you compliment them
Oh,
and then you tell them what to improve on and then you compliment them. So it's like you know. Um, so you can do that, and I think actually what I think the best thing about this is that you should approach them with the mindset of not blaming them and not accusing them, but wanting to work with them to get better for like the group as a whole. Not saying like you're not good enough, like let's work together so the group can clear faster. I think like that change in mentality makes it so that like the people feel less attacked, so they're more willing to be receptive to feedback. Um, that's my experience. But again, like even if you do all of those things, some people are just really sensitive to any potential like negative feedback, and I don't know if there's anything you can do about those people.
can't control what people think.
Yeah. Q, anything else?
Nah, I think yeah, that's
Um,
all.
this question's about: do you see any value for high end groups in having a ninth member solely for callouts or strategizing? Uh, yes. I don't
For
know. We should
sure.
just move on to the next thing. The answer is yes, and that's not super related, I guess. Um, this person says, "How would you work on consistency if a member is having trouble figuring out a mechanic?" I think we talked about that.
Explain it to them. Bot diagrams.
I think one thing you gotta note is different people understand mechanics different ways,
Mhm.
so you might just have to take a different approach than what because like how you understand the mechanic and how they are trying to understand the mechanic might be different. So try to keep multiple perspectives in mind.
Yeah, that's important.
Do you have any tips for setting up uh, a more casual static, like one where you might not be going to clear everything, but just trying to clear as much as possible? I think you put up recruitment posts on FFXIV recruitment or on the Discord, and you just say what you said, like, uh, we're not going to clear everything, but we're just going to try to clear as much as we want. Like, this is the goal of the group. Although I will say, I think clear as much as possible is a little bit vague, and you know, you might get people who think, oh yeah, I don't care about clearing everything. We just want to have a good time. But some people might actually be expecting to at least clear like 3 fights. Some people might not even care if you don't clear one fight, and then you will get conflict. So even if you don't really want a specific hard goal, you should. And my recommendation would be like, hey, let's try to clear at least the third fight by the end, but by the next patch release or something. Um, Even if it's like not, super fast. Uh, but the most important thing is to recruit with that in mind and to clearly state to your members that's what the group is aiming for. Do you guys
I agree. Yeah.
Yep,
okay?
agreed.
How is hardcore rating at 170 plus MS ping?
Well,
Okay.
the Australians can do it.
You can definitely feel the difference. Like some things you have to get there faster, some things you have to pop sprint and all that kind of stuff. And obviously you gotta move faster just in general, but for the most part it's okay. For me it's 180 ping and yeah.
I,
The only annoying thing is depending on the job you play, you can't double weave, so I'm not sure how badly that will affect you.
Sphia got world first from New Zealand on NA servers, right? That's their ping's pretty bad, isn't it? So
I don't know what New Zealand NA ping is.
uh, it's probably not good, just based on
Yeah,
geography.
it's not great for sure.
Does and this like he's done well multiple tiers for a long time. So okay, they say 140. Okay, so that is under 170.
Yeah.
Um,
I think anything under 150, like when you hit above 150, it's like a new tier of, like a ping difference that you can feel it's much more different. But um, yeah, it's fine as long as you're not 250 ping or some weird shit. You're okay.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's just keep going. Virgil asks, how do you kick someone within the group that has a shit personality, ego, and doesn't play well with others without feeling bad inside and offending them too much? Dude,
Kick
if
them,
if
kick
someone
them.
has a okay, if someone has a shit personality, like a huge ego, and doesn't get along with the rest of your raid members, my honest question to you is, why do you feel bad about kicking this person? Like, if they are actually just like a bad person, why do you feel bad about it? And like I know I get that like if it just feels like a bad thing to kick people. That's how I felt. But think about it this way: you have two options, right? One is to kick them, and then your group will recruit someone else who will probably be more fun to play with, and you'll feel better, and your group will have a better time. Or you could not kick them, and then everyone will like hate raid and basically not have fun, and then your group's probably gonna blow up anyway. So between the two, you gotta choose the better one, right? Which is kicking the person. So, like, you can take solace in the fact that like you are choosing the best choice for the group. And at the end of the day, your responsibility is for the group as a whole, not for any particular player. So
I kind of understand what he means though. Like, even though someone's like shitty and everything, sometimes you can't help but feel bad. It's just that you don't want to be mean to them, right?
yeah,
But you should kick them. Yeah, just fuck them. You'll
uh,
you'll you'll not feel bad when you get like a better member. Then when that happens, you'll be like, oh yeah, that was a good decision.
as far as what to say specifically, we're just saying like, I honestly, you just be honest. Like for me, I would say like the group feels like your personality clashes with the rest of us. Like we don't really like we're not really having fun in raid, and we'd rather replace you and find someone else, and that's it. And honestly, if you offend someone because like you, I don't know. I just feel like being honest with people is always the best way, and it might offend them, but like that's their problem for being a bad person. And I think obviously you don't go out of your way to like insult them, but just be honest.
Mhm.
Okay. Um, Not sure if you answered this question already, but what are your thoughts about the mindset of optimizing as you prog? My group in particular likes to do this a lot. We lose a lot of prog and end up seeing and dying to the same thing over and over. This is not a
We don't
Raidly
need
question.
DPS.
This is not a Raidly question, but that's the type of thing I hate, and I actively recruit against that. Um,
Same.
Mm-hmm.
so there's your answer. We all hate it. So
Unless you're actually, hitting a DPS wall.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
If you need it, go for it. If you don't need it, proc first.
yep. Uh, Seif says, how important is it to play multiple classes in hardcore prog? I play Dark Knight and Gunbreaker currently. Is that enough? Depends on your role. I would say that's probably enough, depending on your co-tank. If your co-tank also plays Dark Knight and Gunbreaker, then you have a problem. If your co-tank plays Paladin Warrior, then you're probably fine, right? Kind of depends on your group. Also depends
Yeah.
on your role. I think if you play caster, you have to be able to play Red Mage, and if you only play Red Mage, then it's also probably fine. Kind of depends though.
All three
Yeah.
is ranged for sure.
I think when you're recruiting, you gotta keep these kind of things in mind. Like if you recruit two tanks who both really want to play paladin, then you might be causing a couple of issues. Yeah.
I think my group hasn't been quite supportive of my efforts leading us so far, even though I think my decisions have been reasonable from my point of view and it's making me frustrated. What are your thoughts on my pretending to quit the game while secretly applying to another static? Oh God.
Oh,
Oh no.
Don't do that.
Don't do
Do
that.
not
Don't
do
do
that.
that.
Um,
like if you want to quit the static, just I think it's better just to be honest with the group and tell them, you want to leave.
Yeah.
Don't quit. Don't pretend to quit the game. Oh no.
I think it's worth asking yourself, why does the group not agree with my decisions? And if you feel like the whole group doesn't agree with your decision, isn't the situation that you're just making decisions on your own and not considering the needs of the group? Right? If everyone doesn't agree with you, I feel like you're just kind of doing whatever you want and stringing people along. But we don't have all of the context, but that's how I see it. Yeah, do not pretend to quit the game and secretly apply to another stack. That is, whew.
Yeah, people are gonna find out eventually and you're gonna have a bad rep and everything. It's not good.
That's a dick
And
move.
then yeah, and then your static's gonna find out as well. Like it just even if you don't care that it's a dick move on yourself, like that shit's just bad.
Yeah.
It's not gonna end well.
Um.
It's basically a matter of like integrity, right? Just
Hmm.
be upfront with these kind of things. It's not like you're doing something horrible by leaving the group anyway.
Not
mean-
quite a rate leading question. Oh, sorry. Did you have more to go?
No,
Okay,
that's all.
keep going. Not quite a raid leading question, but what do you do in a situation where the raid leader is stuck in a conflict with one or more other members and the group is collectively siding one way or the other? If it's the other, then just kick them. Wait.
Nah,
And hopefully it
not
resolves. But what
kicking.
if the raid mood is not in line with the raid leader? You should
Kicking is
not.
not the solution here.
Yeah, that is. Kicking people is your last resort.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, don't listen to Stall. No, but this
I'm just trolling. I'm
but
sorry.
it's actually important though. Kicking people as the raid lead is your last resort. Like you want to do everything in your power to avoid it, and only when you recognize that it's like truly necessary and it's like there's nothing else you can do, then you do it. As far as the rest of the question, I'm not sure I quite understand. Do you guys have any thoughts?
This sounds kind of familiar a little bit. It's like, let's say, like, you're our lead, right, Ori? Let's say you fight with Q, and then the other six of us, we started picking sides. Like, oh, I think like Ori is right, Q is wrong, or like Q is right, Ori is wrong. And then let's just say most people side with Q. Then, as a raid leader, what are you gonna do about that?
That's when if that were me, it would be like the choose your battles thing where I'd be like, this is not a battle that I need to fight. And then I just say, all right, we'll just go with whatever you wanted. And that's fine. That's what I would do. But that assumes that people feel pretty strongly about it too. Because like if a conflict gets to the point where like people are picking sides and you're arguing with each other, I feel like that's bad. Like you shouldn't even get to that point. You know?
Sounds more like a. I wonder if the conflict is like a personal thing at that point.
Yeah. I think like as a raid lead you make decisions, but as a raid lead like you need to have like a split mind where it's like you need to consider yourself as like just another member of the group. And then that's like one of the minds. And the other one is like as the so like one of the minds is like as a member of the group, how do I feel? And you need to stick up for yourself as a member of the group as other members of the group would. And the other like part of your mind, you need to think about the group as a whole. You are just one of those 8 people and like what's the best for the group. So it's hard to balance those two, but I think you should try your best to do that. You guys got anything else?
Nope.
No.
Okay. I've recently picked up healing and I'm really, really having a good time, but I need some advice as a raid leader. I don't think my co-healer is being very helpful. He's much more experienced and doesn't give me any advice. I think he kind of expects me to just learn on my own, and honestly, it feels like he's abusing me to a point. Am I the asshole for asking him to apologize? Am I abusing my position as the raid leader?
I feel there's a jump in logic here that I don't quite get. It's like it doesn't give. Hmm. I'm not really sure about this question.
I
I
feel
don't
like it's
think.
lacking context.
Yeah, it's kind of like what what are you asking your co-healer to apologize for? Is my question.
I question's confusing, but okay. I feel like this is lacking context. I think
Yeah.
it's hard to give a good answer to this question. Um,
This question is confusing. Better to kick them. Oh no, Star, what have
thanks,
you done?
Stall. Uh, how do you feel about members who go and get the first clear in PF before the static? After stack days, not fucking up weekly loot. That's fine. I don't see any problem with that.
It
Yeah,
depends.
don't
It
care.
depends. Like, I mean, if you've set expectations on that, maybe if you've said, you've when you created the group, you said we're gonna get the first clear together. Then, I would say that's a problem. But if you're just doing casual raiding and they're not messing up the loot, I don't think it's an issue. But it depends on the group goals.
Uh, yeah, that's a good summary. Uh, what do you do if you feel the biggest problem is the raid leader himself? I think we talked about that in Mutiny. Um, I mean, you can talk to him about it and see if he will change or not. Depends on how you feel about it. Do you expect Mr. Thank Mr. Skeletal asks, do you expect raid leaders to be the one to make important callouts, or can this role be delegated to members who are stronger in the area? 100% delegate the role. Whoever
Yeah.
is the most suited to doing callouts should do the callouts. That easy.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Momo Sama fan 1998 asks, what do you do if people don't take time constraints seriously? Example would be being in phase 4 of any ultimate, but having a time limit since a member has to stop playing in 2 weeks for personal reasons. You can't really kick since it will take more time to get new people and reprog.
So,
I guess it depends on what you mean by taking time constraints seriously. Like they don't take raids seriously. They don't care about clearing within those 2 weeks.
I mean,
well,
it happens, right? It's like I'm not sure what the take time constraint seriously means, but like in T we had like during T prog we had basically like we had 2 weeks to clear, and then we would have run out of time because people had real life stuff. So we didn't kick, we just tried our best, right? That's what we did. I'm not really sure what the question is though.
Um, yeah. What do you think, Stall?
um, I mean, you could just talk to them again. Like, I'm guessing it's not just one person, it's like multiple people. You can probably just talk to them again, ask, like, is everyone like really okay with this? Just be honest, right? Just say that, oh, because I've seen this, and this happen, and we did say that we wanted to clear by this time, but this, and this is going on. So, um, just make sure that everyone is still okay with the goals and everything, and if not, then probably just make some adjustments to it. That's pretty much how I would do it.
Yep. Sounds about right to me. Next question. What are your thoughts on secretly poaching members from other statics?
Oh
In
man,
my opinion,
I hate that.
I actually think it's like not so black and white to call it poaching a lot of the time. In my experience, sometimes it's like you just like you're just talking to people and then they are unhappy with their group and they decide they'll be happier with your group, right? I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that. Like I feel like phrasing it as secretly poaching is like purposely trying to paint it in a negative light, but maybe I'm biased. Because like typically the
Uh,
people make the decision themselves to switch groups, right? It's not like you're forcing them to do it.
I I feel like as long as you're not maliciously doing it and breaking someone's group and like all that kind of like stirring drama, if people already wanted to leave and you just present an opportunity, then it's not too bad. But poaching is very negative, yeah.
But I think that's like, I feel like if you call it, I feel like it just
I think
doesn't,
it's
and most of the time it just doesn't happen in a way that I would describe it as poaching.
Yeah. Poaching is.
I,
Mm,
it's the thing is like, you know, we're playing this game to have fun, right? And if someone's not having fun with a group and someone else says, I mean, someone else is like, he thinks that person thinks they'll have more fun in another group and joins that group. Is it poaching? It's not like they're in, you know, they're in like they signed contracts with you or anything.
yeah, I agree. My idea of
I
poaching is
think
more like you have malicious intent to do it. At least in game. It's
what
like
you're
you're
like.
stirring shit up.
Yeah, I just think people changing groups is fine, and you don't have any like rights to say that this group member is mine, and you can't, you know, mine forever.
Mine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything else, or should we just move on to the last question here?
Could probably just move on. I mean, poaching is like when you have money involved too, right? Like benefits. That usually doesn't happen in
Yep.
raiding.
If the person decides to leave, then like, who are you to stop them, right? As long, I mean, obviously, there's the whole thing of like, oh, they shouldn't just like leave you out to dry. They should like tell you, hey, I'm gonna go leave and feel like joining another group and um, not be a dick about it. But that's their decision. And okay, last question. As a top 200 mythic raider, is there harder raid
Hoggers?
content than savages?
Ultimate.
Yes, ultimate. Those seem like final heroic bosses. They're not. Thinking of trying Endwalker and looking to skip to endgame and try out the raiding.
Hey, have you watched this comparison rate structure comparison thing about WoW versus Final Fantasy 14? I don't know if you've watched it before. It's on YouTube.
Stall has a YouTube video about it on her YouTube, so you can check that out. But as far as difficulty
YouTube.
comparison goes, difficulty in WoW is much more about gear or also like, having 20 people. Final Fantasy is a lot more puzzle mechanics and a lot more personal responsibility. So what you find harder depends on what you think. But my understanding of like the mechanics, just like the mechanics themselves, Final Fantasy 14 fights seem a lot more difficult to do. I do not
It's
think Savage fights, final Savage fights specifically, line up with final heroic fights. That does not seem right at all. Um, but hey,
it's
you
it's
can
just
just skip to the end game and try it. So up to you.
it's just different. Like with 8 man, you have much more personal responsibility. I think it's very hard to compare difficulty between the two games. You can, yeah, but I'd say the good thing about raiding in Final Fantasy 14, it's very accessible. It's easy to get geared, so yeah, you can try it.
Cool. So speaking of plugs, since that was our last question, do you guys want to, plug your stuff so people know where to find you as we close out this panel?
Oh shit, I didn't think about that.
All right, well then I'll go
He,
first.
okay.
Yeah. So thanks for watching, guys. I don't need to plug my Twitch channel because it's here. But hi. Uh, thanks for watching. I'm going to be uploading a VOD of this whole panel to YouTube. So if you miss any of it or you want to rewatch any of it, you can find my YouTube channel here. I also have other videos on my YouTube channel. And the other one, I guess, is I use Twitter sometimes. And I use Twitch, and that's it. And Stall, you go now.
Twitch.tv/stal. I upload videos on YouTube as well. YouTube.com/stalala.
It's
And I
slash C
Twitter.
slash probably.
Nah, you can do it without the C/, you know?
What? Oh my god.
Yeah, you don't need
Oh
the
my
C/.
god.
I found that out the other day too.
Okay.
And Twitter.com/stalala_. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah.
Let me
Oh
like
yes,
this shit.
this slide was prepared by me. It represents my role in the group.
to be clear, I told Q I wanted him to raid lead instead of me, and he was like, no. So I I'm stuck with the job. It's not fair. But yeah, Q, do you want to plug anything?
Sub to stal.
Use your Twitch Primes.
I agree. You can also sub to Ori.
Yeah, Ori's fine too.
Yeah, I'm fine.
Hi, fine.
Oh, wait, I hate you guys. Okay, here's Q's Twitter. You can follow him on Twitter. He's very smart. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys. I think we will close out here, right? Any other closing words you guys want to say?
Don't actually kick people. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for listening to us. I think, we've got a lot of raid leading experience among like all of us have a lot of raid leading experience, but it's not like we're perfect. We're still learning too. But I hope you guys took something useful out of today.
Yeah, what he said.
Yeah, good words. Okay.
Good,
Thanks,
yeah,
guys.
good job.
Bye. Thanks for watching. Bye.